I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Town Board. It's Monday, September 14th, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Ms. Lout?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Colebrook?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Ms. Shenoweth?
Present.
Mr. Williams?
Doesn't appear to be present. Okay.
Yeah, don't see him. I know he had, he said, I am called in and I'm muted. So I'm wondering if we could try to troubleshoot. Oh, this might be him.
I'm present, Mayor and City Clerk. Dennis Roberts.
Thank you.
Wayne is here.
Oh, good.
Okay, we have everyone here. All right, next item on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Could we get a motion to get this on the table or up on the floor?
I make that motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Mary Alice. Are there any corrections? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Ms. Lout?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda or changes? Okay. Public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? I don't see anyone present to do so. Okay. Committee to verify bills would be the Town Fund and General Assistance. Danielle?
Yes. So this past month in the town fund, we had $62,196.52 in expenditures. In the general assistance fund, we had $68,711.27 in expenditures. So our total for this past month was $130,907.79. I'll just note that we are up 2 participants from 145 to 147. I do want to note this represents a significant turnover as 24 cases were closed and 26 cases opened. So we're seeing, a sixth of our general assistance population turnover in a month. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're providing gap funding for people who are out of work, who are waiting on IDS funding. We also had a high number of people who were applying for TANF. So we provide gap funding. It's just a few months of funding while they apply for temporary aid for needy families. So we are still seeing a record number of applications go out the door. The number of homeless is at 67, up from 66 last month. And I do note that the community work program remained closed in August, but we are working with Salt and Light on a reopen plan. And so stay tuned. We should have some information in terms of our plan to reopen that program safely in the next 2 months. Rental assistance, I'll just note that we only had 2 rental assistance applications approved in this month. That's up from 0 last month. Again, the number is down 1 due to the eviction moratorium, which although we will provide rental assistance for people who are back due on rent, as long as they have sufficient income. So there may be less incentive to move quickly. And then we do see layoffs where people don't have enough income to qualify for rental assistance. And we refer them to helpillinoisfamilies.com, and we continue to anticipate a great need for rental assistance once the moratorium is lifted. So we are under budget on that item, but assuming that we will catch up later in the year. Any questions?
Mary Alice.
Are we taking questions about the bills right now, or are we taking questions? Yes.
Yes.
So you have a charge on the BC Bank for something called OMA Incorporated. So I looked at it. It's a voice over IP.
Correct.
So all of our telephone systems are voice over IP. We don't go through I3 for it.
No, we use a voice over IP, which ends up being more flexible and allows us to do call forwarding and voicemail management. We do have I3 broadband services for our internet connection.
So you might want to take a look at telephone.
I would also like to add that UMA makes it much easier to work remotely while there's a pandemic.
I think Mary Alice was just in the process of providing some info. What were you saying, Mary Alice?
I was just looking because I was trying to figure out if that was voice over IP, and it's the amount is different under telephone services under the budget. So I don't know if it's been classified correctly in the
telephone services. Yeah, it should show up both across the town fund and total GA, so I can take a look at that and make a correction if there's a classification issue.
and then it looks like there was some training. So are we still doing, and maybe Wayne, this is for you, are you still doing in-person training? I think there is a training in Iowa, is that right?
Yeah, in the Quad Cities, yes.
So what kind of training is happening in person these days?
Assessor training, that's what happens when your professional organization is run by Republicans.
All right. So those are my questions about the bills for now.
Oh, I wasn't on mute when I said that, was I?
Any other questions for Danielle? Okay.
I'd also like to add there's training in Peoria this week too.
Thank you, Wayne. You want to continue, Danielle?
That was it in terms of the bills. I'm happy to answer any questions folks have. I do have a report I'll wait for my report of officers.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion to accept the Town Fund and General Assistance Fund report?
I'll move that.
Moved by Julie. Bill Brown, was your hand up?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Moved by Julie. Do we have
I'll
a second?
Sharice.
Seconded by Sharice. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Miss Lout,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of officers.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, I'd just like to start with a brief moment of silence. We had 2 participants who died in the last 6 weeks waiting disability payments. This is a really unfortunate part of our job in that it takes years for people to receive disability support, and sometimes in the process they pass away due to that disability. So the people, our participants, are our friends and our neighbors, and I just wanted to ask for a brief moment of silence for their passing. Thank you very much. I wanted to, there were a few things I wasn't able to include in the memo because everything changes all the time. So utility shutoffs notices have begun. The utility shutoff date was September 11th, and I've already seen proof of notices that have gone out. So I wanted to, although there is not enough funding in a LIHEAP to cover the utility shutoffs in our community, since in the state of Illinois, unemployment is up 200%, but LIHEAP subsidies are only up at 49%. So I would like, but I do want to urge anyone who is behind on power or water to please consider applying to LIHEAP, regardless of immigrant status. These are dollars that are actually paid for by customers through their bills and go to customers. So people can apply by calling 217-384-1226. That's 384-1226. Or ccrpc.org/programs/low-income-home-energy-assistance. So you can actually sign up for an appointment online, or you can call to get an appointment. But it's very important that we be looking out for our neighbors in this time of utility shutoffs. And I'm deeply disappointed that Ameren has not taken steps to halt utility shutoffs despite the ICC's recommendation that they do so. I also wanted to just note that, again, I apologize for missing our consolidated social service funding conversation, as there were several deaths at the township right around that time, and I lost track. So I did want to just comment that you will see this evening consolidated social service funding grants. We have taken a kind of rolling approach to funding under COVID. So you approved 3, and then there's several that I'm requesting approval of tonight. It doesn't actually complete our budget of $100,000 for Township. We're currently sussing out UNCC's capacity to serve the community under COVID. So we'll just, there may be additional contracts. So we're trying to secure the contracts as we can. We do have an agenda item on this topic, so I'll save the rest of my notes for that agenda item. In terms of other reports of officers, housing advocacy has been extremely successful. I said in our report that we had helped 25 participants apply for subsidized housing and got 7 into housing opportunities. And Wendy, our deputy clerk, and myself both signed checks today for 3 more people to move in today and tomorrow. So that's huge. So slowly, several every month adds up to a lot over the course of a year. And then I did want to say that we are really ramping up our support for SSI applications for people who are current G8 participants, and I have a SOAR advocate specifically, part-time specifically focused on that, and believe that that position will pay for itself with Social Security and reimbursements. We have served 1,323 people with the Bucket Brigade since March 25th, including 470 children. And you'll see tonight I have a request to fund the Channing Murray Foundation to continue that work. We would like to move that project completely under the Channing Murray Foundation so that we don't have the administrative overhead, and that will be supported through the grants process rather than through our angel donor fund. Solidarity Gardens is wrapping up. We have received hundreds of pounds of produce through that, and we just met this last week to discuss 2021 plans because we had such a successful collaboration on that, and we continue to be concerned about food security issues. We have had a very successful closeout of our stimulus check assistance, and we had received a grant from Heartland Alliance to do that. And so we did 34 hours of tabling. We did 21 one-on-one appointments, and we also did outreach to over 200 people, many of whom we were able to provide the information for them to assist themselves. And I just wanted to announce that we have 8 new interns in our office, and we really appreciate the service of our interns and look forward to having 8 to 10 interns each season going forward. I'm happy to answer any questions about the memo before passing it to Wayne for anything from the assessor's side.
Bill.
Yeah, I was under the impression there was also some utility assistance money available specifically for people affected by the epidemic. Do you know anything about that? And if so, is that being handled through LIHEAP? Can LIHEAP serve as kind of a one-stop call for people? And if they don't qualify for LIHEAP, they might qualify for anything like that?
My understanding is that LIHEAP is the one-stop shop for utility assistance. I do know that there's one gap that we're working to fill in the funding world, and that is for people who may not have the utilities in their name, but they are the person living in the house. And then we also have an issue where utilities is wrapped up with rent. So those two situations they're not extremely common, but they do fall through the cracks. And I know that we recently notified United Way of that gap and are trying to just, if there are any other gaps like that, we really want to know about them so that we can mobilize local funding resources to support filling those gaps. But again, I want to say there is not enough money in the LIHEAP. Like LIHEAP will run out of money unless something changes before those who are unemployed and unable to pay their utilities receive that funding. So there's kind of a deferred crisis as is with the evictions, and we just need to stay on top of monitoring the situation closely.
Any other questions? Mary Alice.
Dania, I know in your memo that you had mentioned that a lot of people that you had contacted weren't getting their stimulus check, and I think that in the next couple of weeks that's going to end. So time is of the essence right now. I'm wondering how successful the people that you worked with were in able to obtain those checks.
So in many cases, we were helping them actually apply for the check. It was up to them, whether or not they wanted to create a banking system or receive a check in the mail. And actually a lot of folks, even though we were ready to support them with free banking options, I don't know if you know, but a quarter of the entire country is unbanked or underbanked. It's probably very similar in Champaign County and in Urbana. And so there are various reasons why people choose not to bank. So most of the people that we supported are actually receiving checks, and we're not going to know whether they receive their checks for some time because there's a delay in that process. What I can tell you is that there were a number of folks who did apply for stimulus funding who did not receive it. And because we had a relationship with Heartland Alliance, we were able to actually escalate through Heartland Alliance to the IRS and fix some of the payment issues that people were facing.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I did want to tag on to the information about utility shutoffs. We've been in touch with Ameren, or I've heard from Ameren, and they recommend that people contact Ameren at amerenillinois.com/recovery because for information on their various utility assistance programs. And they said, they view disconnection as the last resort, even though they have started sending out notices, but there's funds available through the Economic Hardship Recovery Program. We also contacted RPC and Brookins today, and in addition to calling that number that Danielle provided, Thursdays are open for walk-ins for utility assistance at Brookins through LIHEAP. And they apparently have received some extra funding and said they have dollars available to help people. So people who call you, and I've had a couple of calls today at our office, can be referred to also just go to Brookins and ask for where they go to the utility assistance, and they'll be directed to the RPC and the LIHEAP. And then the city also received notice from that we're going to be getting some extra CDBG money. I asked if that could be used for utility assistance, and HUD is telling cities to hold off on doing that until they determine if these utilities have business interruption insurance. And if utilities end up with having this insurance, cities would have to pay back any money they distributed under this program. So we're waiting to see for additional guidance from HUD on whether or not we can use CDBG money. But in the meantime, Brookings said they've got funds and they're ready to help people, and they're currently getting about 100 people a week. So it is a significant problem, but send them to Brookings, and Thursdays is the walk-in days. Okay. Moving on to Wayne.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I am happy, well, I don't know if happy is a word, but the appeal deadline was last Thursday for assessment appeals. So far, we have about 200 appeals, but we're still processing. To compare that to last year, we had about 216. And I also just wanted to let the council know that I applied for a grant through the Local Cure Act with the Department of Economic, Illinois DECO, and that's for grant funding to help with COVID-related expenses. So I did that, and hopefully we'll be hearing something soon from that. That's it.
Any questions for Wayne? Okay, thank you, Wayne. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, any new business? Obviously new business. Ordinance number T 2020-09-002, which is a transfer of appropriation ordinance, Cunningham Township budget.
Yeah, so each year, essentially, if we have overspent on a line item, we need to do a line item transfer before our audit and closing the books. Typically, this is done between July and September. It could be done before, but we usually don't know until we kind of close the books in mid-July what is needed. But we generally have, underspent our budget. There's a few line item transfers that we're requesting, which are enumerated in the resolution, or excuse me, in the appropriation ordinance. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Bill.
Yeah, I think I have a technical correction on page 3 under general assistance, item 1. The second line, 32,000 from GA fund. I think it should be to GA fund.
Where it says transfer the following amounts.
All 3 of those should be to GA fund.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you for catching that. Yes, it should be 2. Because the GA fund personal allowances, essentially we went over by the 32,000.
Any other comments or questions? Mary Alice?
So under general assistance, it has angel donor expense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was $15,000 to angel donor expense. What are the angel donor expenses? Is that just what we spend out of angel donor? How does that work?
Yeah, so we had actually budgeted, okay, open up the budget, a handful of thousands of dollars for the angel donor fund. And then with COVID, received tens of thousands of dollars into that fund. We only spend in expenses what we receive in income, so it's a closed fund. We actually still have surplus in that fund, and because we had so many dollars come in, we were able to help more situations that came up that don't fit within our programs. So, before COVID, that might have been work boots, or it might have been a bus pass to go be with family if you're homeless. Since COVID, it has included the angel donor funds have been the primary funder of the Bucket Brigade, and so that's been the biggest expense out of that. So all of the expenses are, basically there's an exclusive line item for income called angel donor income, and there's an exclusive line item called angel donor expenses, and you should never see the expenses exceed the income.
Hey, I just want to say, and I don't think Danielle did a good I don't think she did the best job in explaining this. She budgeted a certain amount to receive in and far exceeded the amount of angel donations that came in. So I just wanted to make that clear. Also on page 3, those twos are to stay like they are because it's in the section 1, it's 152. We're transferring the amounts from those amounts to the GA fund because it's the general assistance fund, but the personal expense line item of the GA fund, which is separate from, say, the payroll expense from the township assessor fund or the township supervisor fund or the township other fund. So the resolution doesn't need correction that way.
So are you saying it should read 32,000 to GA fund or from GA fund?
Oh, I see. Right there, no, it should say 2.
That's
I
that
thought
was
there
the
was a-
correction that Bill mentioned.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm doing this on my phone. It's a little difficult.
That's okay. Any other questions? Can we get a motion on the floor, please? Bill?
I'll move to approve ordinance number T-2020-09-002, transfer of appropriation ordinance with the technical correction noted on page 3, item 1 under general assistance, 32,000 from GA should be 32,000 to GA.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved by Bill Brown, seconded by Sharice. Further discussion?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, Wayne?
I also want to point out that in the town fund, which includes the assessor budget, the supervisor budget, and the town fund other budget, we spent a total of 86% what was appropriated, and then the GA fund we spent 84% of what was appropriated. So I'd just like to point that out.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Lout,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts, Mr.
Dennis,
Roberts,
could you unmute?
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is Resolution T-2020-09-011R, which is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign agreements with social service providers for grants dispersed through the Consolidated Social Service Funds for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you. As we mentioned last month, things have been a little bit non-standard in this process due to COVID. And we needed to hear from granting agencies in terms of the adjustments that they plan to make under COVID. So we were able to disperse $20,000 to healthcare consumers, $6,500 to Sola Gracia Farm, and $10,000 to the Wesley Food Pantry based on your approval August 10th. This is kind of, I guess the next slew would be $6,500 to the Refugee Center to support immigrant families program, $7,500 to the Refugee Center to support their newcomer immigrant student support program, $21,000 to the University YMCA for their New American Welcome Center, and Channing Murray Foundation, $8,000 for the Red Herring Meal Voucher Program / Bucket Brigade. And I would just say that I was able to watch the video from your conversation. I very much support notification about incomplete applications within a set window of time, because I think there can be misunderstandings about whether something is complete or not. So I thought that was a really good suggestion and intend to add it in this next round. I will note that I don't believe there were many historically funded applications that were not funded simply because they were incomplete. So that wasn't a major factor in the funding this year. We did have reduced funding we didn't accept a lot of the new applications. There were a number of agencies that are not kind of responding to the urgent need of now that applied in January, February, but are not responding to COVID. And we specifically steered away from funding public agencies and public bodies. So most of the denials essentially fit into the category of a new organization that we had not funded last year and we have funding cuts, or was not open and available during this time. So that's the piece. I do want to note that this ordinance that you have before you includes Channing Murray Foundation. And then when you put your hat on as city council, you'll also see Channing Murray Foundation. So to clarify, we would like you to support the township paying Channing Murray Foundation, and then you would exclude that fundee as city council. So you wouldn't fund through both venues. And the reason I spoke with staff late, city staff late last week about this, and we are able to verify that they've served township participants and that name information is confidential. So it makes more sense for township is in a better position to verify. We had given it to the city to kind of balance the numbers. But like I said, we still have additional funding that we have not used. We're still waiting to have a conversation with Urbana Neighborhood Connections, and I can give you an update on that shortly once I have that conversation. There was a couple of other questions came up, and I just wanted to answer that YMCA and CU Fair both provide direct funding for housing, utilities, and other needs. That's important for the community to know that they have funding for that. And I think that was it in terms of the notes that I had in terms of responding. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Basically, these are the grants I'd like to go ahead and release, and these grant amounts. And this is what was recommended by the committee and also was in the memo that you received a few weeks ago.
Any questions on this? Sharice?
Okay, Danielle, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Okay, with the Channing Murray Foundation, you were saying that, okay, you want us to be able to just give over instead of administering the funds from the township? Do you want it to come from the city or vice versa? I'm sorry, I'm just confused on.
Yeah, sorry. So we, since it's a consolidated fund, we look at the applications as a whole, and then after we decide administratively what's the most convenient is usually what it comes to. And we had originally talked about Channing Murray Foundation being funded by the city of Urbana, but there's logistical challenges to that because they're providing, we're the primary referring agency. And so we know whether or not a bucket was received or not. So anyway, we're suggesting that township be the fundee and not the city of the bucket brigade. So I just want to clarify, since you have that on both the township resolution and the city council resolution, their name appears.
And that way it won't, they don't get double funds. Correct. from city and also from you. So
exactly,
we just give it to you to administer.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. All right. I'm just trying to understand that. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. And we use the same contract and process to administer, just for the record.
Any other questions? Okay. Could we get a motion to put this on the floor?
Okay, I do that. I'll move resolution T 2020-09-011R, a resolution authorizing the supervision of signed agreements with social service providers for grants distributed through the Consolidated Social Service Funds for the year 2021 to be approved.
And I'll second that.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Mary Alice. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Lout,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Please unmute.
I'm trying to, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is resolution number T 2020-09-012R, which is a resolution setting compensation of Cunningham Township officials for the 4-year term beginning May 15th, 2021. That includes the township supervisor, township clerk, township board, and beginning January 1st, 2022, the township assessor.
Yes, so this, as you'll see it kind of coded in yellow, this is for discussion purposes at this point. We had some questions for you. So essentially, the way it works is that the town board sets the compensation for the officers, and it used to be for the town board as well, at the end of your term. So essentially approaching the end of all of our terms, which are up next year, there will be an election in the spring and the new terms start in May of 2021. So each year or every 4 years, you set the compensation levels or stipends for the officials. So you need to, the clerk has informed me that we need this on file by November 2nd. So essentially what we thought we would do is bring this to you in September, let you know it's coming, ask you what information you would like us to gather for you, and then request a decision in October, so that it can be on file before the November 2nd date. So what you see before you is the resolution with just blanks under the compensation, and with essentially what the health insurance proposal is before you. So I guess the question I would ask the board is, what information would you like to help make the decision next month? And then we would gather that information, and I'd like to get it to you with enough time for you to have a discussion. So that could be comparables with other townships, our size, or academic communities. You could look at a history of the salary increases of public officials, of the supervisor and assessor, or other public officials in the area. This is my first time doing this because I've only been a supervisor this particular term. And so I guess I just wanted to hear from you how I could help facilitate and gather the information that you would need to make a decision. So if you could just put some questions on the table, I will then gather answers and come back to you.
Thoughts from the board? Dennis.
So I think probably information about the level of compensation over the last 10 years would be useful. That would give us an idea of the growth of that position and its expenses for us. And probably the second thing would be comparables in other communities of our size.
Any other questions? Julie.
I I looked at this a little bit myself too, but I think something to keep in mind, no matter what our cost of living increases expected over these periods of time.
Okay. And what about historical? Is that as well?
Was that directed to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that Dennis's suggestion of looking in the past 10 years would sort of give us a sense of that. And then if we do send, I guess I feel like if X, then we'll want to know Y, depending on where we feel like compensation sits. One additional useful thing would be to understand what cost of living is expected to be.
Going forward.
Going forward, correct.
Okay. Bill Brown?
Just I wanted to mention that if we're going to be using comparables, it might also be good to look at specifically at coterminous townships, because other townships our size may have other responsibilities for roads and bridges and things like that that a coterminous township doesn't. So if you can find examples of a few others, I know there's not a lot, but a few others in Illinois that are coterminous, that might be more appropriate.
Okay.
Mary Alice.
I just wanted to expand a little bit on Dennis's time range, just to include the 2008 downturn that we had. So that would be 12 years instead of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems appropriate. Also, to be noted that 4 years ago, the township board decided not to take a stipend, and I'm willing to continue that, so that more funds are directed directly to people's needs in the community and not necessarily to our benefit.
Bill.
Yeah, that reminds me, I think I would support a higher salary for the town clerk. I think we also reduced that. I forget what it is now. It's practically zero. So you might, I mean, I think that would be something we'll have to discuss, but I think I'd be interested in making that more reasonable, make it more compared to the work they do.
Yeah, we could provide the overall compensation of the town clerk as well, because it's a city council town clerk combination. So it'd be important to look at the whole compensation package.
Any other questions you'd like answered or addressed? Okay. I will note that we'll be doing the similar exercise for city council and elected official salaries as well. So this is a good guide.
Okay, great. And I'm also, I will try to articulate job duties, because I think it's important for, for you to have a description of the positions that you're looking to fund. And especially with town clerk, it's been, I would love, some additional clarity going forward around the duties of the town clerk. So I will put forward kind of what the current duties have appeared to be and some of the opportunities for growth in the future.
I do have a question. When you say comparable, I heard coterminous, but are you also looking in terms of comparable in population, comparable in demographically, other than population count? For the assessor, a lot of times we measure our size in terms of number of parcels or EAV. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yes.
Sounds like a yes.
To all of it or some of it?
Well, whatever you can find out. There's only a handful of coterminous townships, so it'd probably be hard to find one, although there might be one similar to us in a lot of those areas, but yeah.
Well, what I can say is the only real difference between a coterminous township as far as the administration is the highway commissioner, which we don't have. And so in terms of what an assessor does versus a township supervisor, it's not going to change whether a township is coterminous or not coterminous.
Well, we can provide all the coterminous townships, and then I would recommend providing what I would consider our sister cities, so sister townships that have similar kinds of programs, and then similar sizes in terms of number of parcels and population. So we'll put something together, and then if you have additional questions or would like us to research other pieces, we can do that. But this is helpful. I just wanted some direction in terms of what you would like to see. And thank you to the clerk for reminding us that this is coming forward. So.
Okay. Last item is resolution number T 2020-09-013R, which is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with Clifton Allen Larson for audit services.
Great. This will probably be the easiest thing you do tonight. So this is our 5th year of CLA providing our audit services. We will be going out to bid. Typically, you won't have the same audit services for longer than 5 years, but I'd like to go ahead and close out the agreement that was started under Michelle Mayon and get our final audit for the year, and then you'll be seeing requests for proposals going out for next year and a change of auditors.
Is there a motion to get this on the floor?
I'll move resolution T 2020-09013R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with Clifton Allen Larson for audit services for approval.
I'll second that, Dennis.
By Mary Alice, seconded by Dennis. Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Laut,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
I have a
Motion-
question before we go any further, Mayor.
Yes.
On resolution 012R, did you guys vote on that yet?
That was for information only at this point.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
It'll come back.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Did you have a
I was just going to say good night. Have a good evening, and thank you.
good night? Thank you. With no further business before the Cunningham Town Board, this meeting is adjourned, and it'll be followed by a meeting of the Urbana City Council. So if the clerk just lets me know when you're ready to start, we'll begin.